Did Russia finally attack a NATO country? Look at what happened. 19 Russian drones crossed into Poland, violating the airspace of a NATO country, and the response was immediate. Borders closed, troops mobilized, and French fighter jets deployed to reinforce air defense. But the most frightening detail is that all this is happening in parallel with Zapad 25, the largest joint military exercise between Russia and Belarus, which could be much more than just training. What's at stake is the future of European security. Aren't we just looking at routine maneuvers? Zapad 2025 began on September 12, and for the first time, it happened right after a direct Russian drone attack against Poland.
Moscow calls it a defensive exercise.
But for Warsaw and for all of NATO, this is a planned provocation, a rehearsal for invasion.
And because of that, Poland made the drastic decision to close all its borders with Belarus. Now I ask you, do you believe that Putin is just training or really testing NATO's limits? Now what is Zapad 2025? Zapad is held periodically, but it has never been as feared as it is now.
This year, Russia and Belarus announced that the goal is to improve cooperation between their forces, train for territorial defense, and simulate responses to external attacks.
But in practice, the exercise includes something much more aggressive: simulations of offensives against Eastern Europe. The troops are not limited to training for defense. They also rehearse attacks in critical regions, such as the Suwalki corridor, a 70-kilometer strip that separates Belarus from the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad.
This corridor is called Kalashnikov, NATO's Achilles heel, because if it is taken, it would completely isolate Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia from the rest of the alliance.
It's a small geographic point, but with enormous strategic importance. And it's exactly in this scenario that Zapad 2025 becomes more dangerous, because it's not just an exercise, but a way for Moscow to rehearse a move that could change the balance of power in Europe. But Poland didn't stand still. As soon as Zapad began, Warsaw announced the temporary closure of all its borders with Belarus. The measure went into effect at midnight on Thursday. It's important to understand the closure is not intended to stop a large-scale invasion.
That would require trenches, anti-tank ditches, mines, and a fortified defensive line.
The goal was different: to block the movement of people, goods, and vehicles that could be used to infiltrate Russian and Belarusian agents, saboteurs, or spies.
At the same time,
the Polish forces reinforced patrols. They positioned thousands of soldiers and armored vehicles and declared that the border will remain closed until the situation is considered safe. The message is clear. Poland will not allow infiltrations at a time of maximum tension. In your opinion, was this measure an act of intelligent precaution or just symbolic?
Write your thoughts in the comments. To understand the seriousness of Zapad, you need to look at the map.
The Suwalki corridor is a narrow strip of 70 kilometers that connects Belarus to the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. It may seem small, but this piece of land is seen as NATO's greatest vulnerability. If Russian troops advance through this corridor in a surprise attack, they could completely cut off land access between the Baltic countries and the rest of the alliance. This would mean isolating Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia in a matter of hours, creating an unprecedented strategic dilemma. And that's why Zapad 2025 is such a concern. Because while Moscow calls it an exercise, analysts see it as a practical rehearsal for how to exploit this deadly NATO weakness. And it wasn't just Poland that reacted. NATO raised its alert level. Lithuania reinforced its air security and announced additional measures to protect its borders. Latvia also intensified patrols and monitoring. France sent Rafale fighter jets to Poland, strengthening the country's air defense right after the drone attack. This gesture showed that European military support is not just political. It is more concrete, with aircraft and troops positioned to respond to any violation. All of this puts the region on maximum alert. Any failure, any miscalculation could become the spark for a larger conflict.
Do you think NATO is capable of protecting Europe's rear?
Right here in the comments, the trigger for all this mobilization was the drone attack. 19 Russian aircraft crossed Polish airspace.
The Kremlin denied direct involvement, but no one believed it. For NATO, it was a deliberate provocation, a calculated test to measure the alliance's response. This kind of action is part of the so-called hybrid warfare where Moscow combines military exercises, migration pressure, and cyber attacks to destabilize its neighbors. It's no coincidence. It is exactly through this border that Putin has been trying for years to flood Poland with illegal immigrants from the Middle East. Warsaw has already built a long fence and keeps about 10,000 soldiers on constant patrol to contain this pressure. Now, with drones flying over its airspace, the message is clear. Russia is willing to test every red line.
Zapad 2025 is not just a routine exercise.
It is a showcase for Moscow to show that, despite the war in Ukraine, it is still capable of projecting power against NATO. The official simulations talk about territorial defense.
But what is really concerning are the offensive scenarios, direct attacks against the Suwalki corridor and against the Baltic countries.
For many analysts, it's as if Russia is rehearsing the next steps of an escalation that could sooner or later become real.
Putin's message is simple. Russia will not back down in the face of NATO. On the contrary, it will keep increasing the pressure, testing how far the alliance is willing to go. Today, all of Eastern Europe is on red alert. Borders are closed, patrols have been intensified, fighter jets are in the air, and radars are on day and night. Every movement of Russian and Belarusian troops is being monitored in real time. NATO's message is clear. Any aggression will be met with an immediate response. But at the same time, there is fear of a miscalculated response. A downed drone or a skirmish at the border could be enough to light the fuse of a large-scale war. London. At a time when the line between exercise and war has never been so thin, Zapad 2025 is not just an exercise. It's a test of limits, a rehearsal for war, and a provocation that could decide the future of Europe.
And I ask you, should Poland and NATO respond even more forcefully to intimidate Putin?
Or is it safer to avoid any direct confrontation? Leave your opinion here, subscribe to the channel now, and share it with your friends. Because every step taken in Eastern Europe could be the trigger for the next World War. Leave a like. I'm Shimon Oliveira. I'll see you in the next video. See you next time.